And so he was pardoned, and I would say that Private Harry Farr, we beg your pardon. And I would say, let us learn something from this, something about leadership and something about our behavior as human beings, our nature as human beings. Let us learn something from the fate of Harry Farr. And that is that we as human beings are not infallible. We are not perfect, and we will fall short of the ideals that we aspire to. We'll fall short of those. And we may not always be as bold, and we may not always be as heroic, and we may not always be as brave as we want. But while we may fall short on those traits, let us never fall short in compassion, in sympathy, and in understanding. And let us, when we look to judge others, let us remember and let us know that our judgment is as imperfect as we are. And remember that it is us who, in the words of Wilfred Owens, we are the ones that dealt them war and madness. And so let us also be the ones who deal them mercy and forgiveness. And I think that's all I've got for tonight. So, Echo Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a rough one.
Yeah. Odd. It's like an odd feeling, right? Just that, even that final part of that last book. How, you gotta essentially kill or witness, or both, your friend. And even until that, it's not like you guys are friends, he betrays you,
No.
and you're mad at him and then you kill him. It's not that. It's like, yeah, some other thing kind of happened. Meanwhile, you're still friends. And then you got to be a part of, in whatever way. Like right in front of his face too.
Yeah.
Like him dying. And the kind where you're literally saying, bye. Hey, bye. And then next moment, dead.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of, when you think, you read these books, you have this picture in your mind, and it's so off-putting, just all the different facets that just come to play with a scenario like that.
And there's obviously there's a huge dichotomy in this. The huge dichotomy in this is that there's all these millions of brave soldiers that went over the top, and they were killed. And so how can you have any sympathy for the people that are like, no, I can't do it? Yeah. And the answer is, you've got to recognize that people are different.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that last guy calls him a martyr. Yeah. And the perspective that even someone that stood by him and someone that fought and took the same risks and could have been killed himself and happened to live, he recognizes, like, hey, this happens. And there's one part that kind of, when I hear about this guy, the one guy gets rolled up or gets caught by some guy that's patrolling around the rear looking for deserters. It's like, when I hear about that guy, I can picture that guy. Yeah. He's in the rear saying, oh, you need more brave, get up to the front.
Yeah.
Like, you can picture that guy.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes me angry.
Yeah.
Because you got somebody that's in the rear policing up people, sending them to the front. Why aren't you up on the front?
Yeah.
Get up there yourself. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a dichotomy to it in that, you know, I mean, obviously you uphold and have the utmost respect for the bravery of the people that step up, and I put them on the highest pedestal. And then you've got these people that contradict that. I think that the line gets drawn in the fact that these guys lose control. They can't do it.
Yeah.
They can't do it anymore. They mentally can't take it. And again, you know, this is the same thing that Dick Winters said, the same thing that Hackworth said, that the guys reach a limit and they're done. Yeah. And only people that have been in extensive combat recognize that the people reach a point. Yeah. And there's that whole section in Band of Brothers where some of those guys that are total studs, they can't go anymore. Yeah. They break down. And Dick Winters is like, okay, as a leader, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my best to take care of them. If we can get them recovered, cool. If not, respect. If not, hey, it's okay. You did what you could.
Yeah.
It's a strange dichotomy.
Yeah. And you can't help but try to imagine, not necessarily the specific scenario, but like what is it? How does it feel to literally like not be able to do something? You know, like you. Yeah, well,
there's a lot of shame for these guys that came home, and there was shame that they weren't wounded, they weren't physically wounded, and the government treated them very badly in many cases.
Yeah,
like, oh, you're cowards, and so it's awful. It's absolutely awful. That's why I hate World War I. I hate World War I.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's not like, you know, they're taking a spin class and they quit halfway through because they were too tired or something like that. This is
no, Echo, you are correct. They were not in the spin class.
This is World War I, by the way. Like super treacherous, super, yeah. And then you're like, oh yeah, what? You don't have the guts, or you're not brave enough for this.
And then people back in the safety of calling judgment on guys that, and that's the other thing is these guys, almost every one of those guys, they had fought for some certain amount of time. They'd fought for 6 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. They had fought and they broke.
Years.
So
yeah, man,
it's awful. It's awful. But you know, I think it's something that if we can keep in perspective, because there's so much judging.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. People judge each other all the time.
Yeah,
it's like, you know what? Take a wrap off your judgment.
Yeah,
that was sort of what I was thinking through the whole time. I was thinking about how often am I judging someone?
Yeah, huh?
You know, it's like, well, yeah, you don't get to judge. You don't get to judge. You just do. You worry about you.
Yeah.
And hey, instead of trying to judge, why don't you try and help someone? Yeah. There's a novel idea. Instead of placing judgment on someone that's having a hard time with something, why don't you try and help them? Why don't you try and figure out how you can support them? Why don't you figure out what they need?
Yeah.
Just think if anyone had that attitude. One person would have stepped up and said, hey, look, I know this guy. He was a good guy. Let me try and get him back in the game. Let me try and figure out what's wrong.
Yeah.
Instead of everyone jumping on board the judgment bandwagon.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it's that feeling of like, I'm over here, you're over there. Like, hey, I don't need that kind of help, so why should you, kind of thing. I don't know.
Don't judge.
Don't judge. All right, well.
Instead of judging, help. How's that? That's my motto.
Yeah.
Instead of placing judgment, how about you help someone out?
Support somebody.
Support. I like what you just did there.
Speaking of which, how about let's go into some support? You know, support yourself. By the way,
before you go to that opening poem by Wilfred Owen is freaking legit.
Yeah.
Freaking legit. And I should read it again. I should have read it at the end or something. But go back and listen to it, because it's an incredible poem from a guy that went through all that.
Yeah.
He went into the psychological ward, if it was called that. He went through what would have been called a psychological ward at the time, and then he went back to the front, and then he was awarded for valor, and then he got killed. And he wrote that powerful, powerful poem. It's freaking awesome. So, I had to throw that out there. Go back and listen to it.
Yeah, fully.